Okay, we are live.
All right, good evening. This is a committee meeting, facilities committee meeting. Today's Wednesday, March 5th, and it's 5:03. I'm Jennifer Perez, committee chair. We have Andre Woodson and Albert Benahan as committee members. Also on the call, we have board members Robert Traber, Joseph Kalovic, Maritza Estremera Jimenez, Willie Medina, and I think I have all the board members. Um, all right, so we'll get started. Today's agenda, the first item, we have the approval of meeting minutes from February 12th, 2025. Is there?
Move, Mr. Benahan.
Mr. Benham moves that. I'll second it. Is there any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, those pass. Next, we have a presentation on the food and nutrition services. I believe Mr. Steele or Mr. Garcia is going to lead that.
I'll kick it off, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Steele. Good evening. This evening, you're going to get a thorough overview of the food and nutrition operation. Mr. Steele has created a PowerPoint that we're going to go through. If we reserve questions till the end, that'll be great. So with that said, there's been a great partnership between facilities and food and nutrition services. We've unified some of our platforms technology-wise in terms of work orders, training for custodians, training for staff, on-site inspections, the same inspections that we do every day, our head custodians. They've implemented something similar in their kitchens. So, we're trying to have a more uniform approach to how we report out to everyone. And you'll get a sense of all of that as Mr. Steele starts to present. So with that said, Kilma, if you can take over.
Thank you, George. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. So as George mentioned, I'm going to give you a brief, slightly detailed overview of our nutrition services. So we are one department with 5 sub-departments working together to ensure all meals are served. And that is split between our management team, which is in the school lunch district, our production kitchen that prepares the meals, shipping and receiving that handles all of our ordering, finance and payroll that handles the office, maintenance and repair for all of our on-site equipment. As George mentioned, that we do have a new partnership in facilities, and that helps with the communication between nutrition department and facilities. And it played a key role for us because with FMX, we were able to add QR codes to all of our equipment, and it gave us the ability to transfer everything and keep track of all of our purchases and repairs. So we are under a rebuild, and with rebuilds, there's challenges and changes. So a lot of the challenges, some of the challenges that we've experienced were exhaust system failures in most of the schools due to poor handling. Our refrigeration system at the nutrition center is from the 1970s. As you can see in this photo, this is a water tower that is costing us a lot of money in water bills just because of it has to constantly use water to cool down the systems. Fortunately, we're working on getting this completely renovated, but this is what we were working with to feed the students. We also had to deal with broken packaging machines that were 25 years old. It broke down daily, so we got in new packing machines in December of 2023. That way we can prepare meals at a lower cost because we had to purchase meals that at a higher cost that were prepackaged just to keep up with the volume. And as you can see from the video, this is from our new machines, and this is a orange chicken and fried rice. So this is actually pumping the sauces for the 15 to 17,000 meals that we're preparing daily. Some other challenges were breakfast in the classroom. As you can see from the data, it's a lot of classrooms, a lot of meals to deliver daily. And Prior to my arrival, they were delivering meals in these green baskets. That's milk, hot food, and no one paid attention to it. That's not okay. So we removed all the shopping baskets and replaced it with insulated bags. This can at least help keep the contamination out and help with the transportation, because there are some schools without elevators, and the cafeteria staff, they got to carry these baskets up the stairs. This doesn't alleviate the problem, but it does help a little bit. So for the future, we plan to pilot some breakfast vending machines for last chance breakfast, and then hopefully use that to take the load off of the staff while delivering breakfast to the schools without elevators. This would also be a part of the free lunch, and with our Titan program, we can implement it where they can actually just go to the machines and get their breakfast. Some goals that we are working on in the nutrition department in our rebuild is to promote a positive culture for mutual respect. We're organizing our team, building activities to strengthen our relationships. We're ensuring that the environment that we have is supportive. We're training and developing our team, our staff, our management team, doing quarterly trainings, behavioral assessments. We're really trying to embrace our staff. My management team and I, we're a fairly new management team, and we understand what the staff they're going through. And we also understand that we bear the weight of the past, and we're trying our best to ensure that everything is working out for the best and ensure that students are receiving the best quality meal. We focus on a lot of recognition. We even play some examples are safety bingo. That's a game that recognizes safety, where as long as every school there's no incidents, no slips, no falls, no cuts, we put out a bingo number. If anyone falls down to management, we reset the game. Some more goals are to enhance our breakfast lunch program. Obviously, every year we just have to get better. We take that feedback and we try to promote better, give better food to the students. We're hoping to start some cooking at elementary schools, and we're implementing some new promotional and special events to draw attention to meals. Our requirements for meals to be reimbursable is offer versus serve. And we have to follow some strict guidelines to ensure that we can feed the students. So this is just an example. Breakfast, 3 out of 4 of the components. Lunch, 3 out of 5. Whole grains must be whole grain. So sometimes it may be misunderstood why we're doing certain things or why we're serving whole grain pasta, but the only way to make sure these meals are free and reimbursable is to follow these rules. And then if you look at the table, it's showing by June 2027, we have to reduce our sodium limits for the week. So that can also play into why, some students will complain saying, well, there's no flavor in the food. Well, to make sure that the meals are, safe, we have to reduce our sodium. But it is things we're working on. We're increasing our spices and herbs, try to bring in some non-sodium items to really increase the meal's flavor. So my first year, I identified our inconsistencies. I took the year to review the cafeterias, taste the food, look to see what was thrown in the garbage. I proposed a plan on how we can make some changes, and that included cafeteria, kitchen renovations, standard changes, and we started in my second year. So my second year, we eliminated some items, formed meat patties, we added some rice and pasta dishes, reduced some of those meals that were just individually packaged and purchased frozen. We eliminated frozen sandwich as the first option. We do keep them as backup meals, but I did not agree with that being the first option for a sandwich. We should make them fresh. We included vegetarian, vegan options. We took that data from that year and moved on to this school year and added items back that the students missed, and we updated new items, added whole muscle chicken. What is whole muscle chicken? A formed chicken patty, as you can see, they're all uniform shape. A whole muscle chicken patty, they're not all shaped the same, but it's a fresh piece of chicken that wasn't cut, grounded up, and reformed into a patty. So we're trying to give the students a better quality food. So right here is a chart of meals served by year. We increased our meals the second year I was here by 148,000. And as of January of 2025, we're already at over 2 million meals. This next initiative here is one of my passions because I do not like paper. And last school year, we didn't spend any money on computer paper. I made sure we used the backs in every single piece of color paper before we purchased paper. I eliminated all styrofoam. I was told that the garbage is burnt anyway, and I said I did not care. We're going compostable, and we've achieved 85% compostable paper, down to our breakfast bags, paper bags, and serving trays, all compostable and recyclable. My next initiative was cafeteria enhancements. As you can see, this was Columbus School, and I chose the school because I wanted to show you that we're not picking just schools in the better part of Bridgeport. We're picking every school to change. And this was Columbus School. As you can see, there's nothing keeping this food hot. There's nothing keeping anything cold. And the second picture, you can see we added some serving lines and displays. This way the students can actually enjoy their food, take their food themselves. We're not serving food from milk boxes anymore. We're actually using a sleek merchandiser in all of our schools. We completed a complete renovation at Cesar Batalla and Central High School. This was Batalla before. As you can see, it's still nice, but it could be better. This was the change. We added merchandisers. As you can see, the milk looks better, the fruit looks better. We added some hot display so we can service more students in a shorter period of time. This was Central High School. We could not serve the amount of students at Central. We renovated this over spring break in a week, and we created this. It's an all grab and go station, custom built to refill all of the food from the back of the kitchen. This way, we can feed 450 students in 20 minutes because you're not waiting in line, asking for what you need. Everything is all lined up and you just have to walk in and grab. And this is a hot food serving station. And as you can see, it's filled from the back, and behind it, that's the kitchen. In 2024, we remodeled Blackham School, built a new walk-in for the cafeterias, upgraded the floors. High schools, we introduced the slushy machine. The slushy machine is a big hit. It's actually 100% fruit juice with no additives into it. And then we remodeled Beardsley School. Beardsley School, the floor was a little messed up. And as you can see, the serving line was a little outdated. We updated it, added new systems, added new machines, and really uplifted it a little bit more. We even fixed the floor. For 2025, if you haven't heard, yesterday we launched our touchless salad bar system at Fairchild Wheeler. We plan to launch this in the other high schools by the fall, and I even have it on the plans for the new BASIC. Future cafeteria enhancements, we want to rebrand to Child Nutrition Cafes. We reached out to principals asking for logos, school colors. We want brand identity. We want to communicate. We want to work with communications to get the word out. As you can see, this is the list of schools that we're working on upgrading and really giving the cafeterias a new life. With that, we're also going to be upgrading the cafeteria tables at some schools that have newer tables. Depending on how things go, we're planning on repurposing those tables. We're not going to let anything go to waste. This is an example of High Horizons, sample of Marin, sample of Batalla, and then this is a sample of Tisdale with cafeteria table plans. we reached out to Dr. Worthy and she had sent us the logos and the colors, and this was the result that she loved. And as we're getting our images back, we're reaching out to the principals, asking their feedback just to ensure that, you know, the entire community is involved in this project. This is a sample of Central High School of what we're going to do. We even took into consideration custodians. They mentioned that the high schools, they have to pull out the chairs and it's really difficult to clean. So we really thought about how can we incorporate these new tables to ensure that they can just lift up and that everyone in facilities and nutrition were working together. Even these high tops, the chairs all lift up and fold in. Some technology advanced enhancements we've done. We've implemented a department-wide software called Titan. That software we can order through. Our shipping department receives food through Titan. It updates our inventory automatically. Our menu is created using those items purchased. The school cafeterias use Titan to plan their meals for the month. Titan can convert those planned meals into an order for each cafeteria. Titan converts those orders into deliveries for our drivers. And then we take all of that information and we can use it to plan the menu to see what is liked, what has been thrown in the garbage. We're implementing digital signage. I don't know if you've seen at the train station or at a grocery store, those really tall digital screens. So we're going to implement those in actually all of the schools. That way we can update the signage whenever we need to, give some menu information. And some schools, we may change the menu. This way we can update that in all the nutritionals on the fly from the nutrition center. We're also implementing POS systems at all the elementary schools. We're moving away from that clicker system and really getting all of our meals recorded digitally. So the nutrition department, we're working really, really hard to ensure that we're doing the right thing by the state, by the students. And we couldn't do it without the cafeteria staff. We couldn't do it without the drivers, the warehousemen, the management team. And we're being noticed. This is an article from last July where we were recognized for being an up and coming school district. When we went to the school nutrition show in Boston, they mentioned how Bridgeport is one of the largest school districts in Connecticut and that we're really changing what we're doing for the students. So I'm really happy to be here, and I'm thank you to the board and George and to the nutrition department staff. The end.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. This is that was really a great presentation, and want to thank your staff and the whole nutrition department for the work you're doing. I'll take any questions from committee members first. Mr. Benahan, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, how's everyone? I have a question. Before you do this change, how was your budget, Mr. Steele, before you do the change, and how much is the difference between now you spend all this change? Look amazing. I like it. Of course, when it's about kids, I don't complain, and I don't see the, about the money, but want to know what was the budget before you spend this, and now how's it different now?
Fortunately, we've increased meals, which helped balance that budget. When I arrived, there was a previous department goal where they had $2 million issued for these changes. So when I arrived, the money was there and I had to I had to start the plan. There was just a request for the funds. So that's when I'd spent the first year to identify what was wrong before I just made any just drastic changes.
And do you have the breakdown before and after how much you spend in each school? The whatever change right now, the breakdown how much you spend in each school. The change.
Yes, I can gather that and send that out.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. I have one question, but let me think about it. So, Madam Chair, now question for now. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you, Mr. Woodson.
Yes, I have a quick question. I had spoke to Dr. Avery a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him about about his what he thought about increasing the time for the breakfast program. What do you think about that? Do you think that'd help increase the participation?
I think we would have to, I don't think it would increase the participation because most of the breakfast that we serve go directly to the classroom. And I think it would, if the breakfast time would increase, I think that would take away from the time to prepare for lunch. And I wouldn't want to cause that kind of issue. But I think if we had more of, no, I think it's fine. I think it wouldn't change the numbers at all because we also do give last chance breakfast.
Okay, okay. I'm just checking on that because, like I said, early, I was just, I'm just kind of, I was just a little disturbed when I heard that meeting with the governor and a couple of teachers had mentioned about students coming to school hungry, and I don't know how they come to school. I'm not speculating. When I know stuff does happen, but it was just making me wonder why the kids come to school hungry, and they mentioned how they were hungry, maybe going home from school. So I was just wondering. I was asked and inquired with Dr. Avery, maybe we could try to get see what we're doing. I know a previous superintendent was trying to implement like a dinner program. So I'm not, I know the budget is under a lot of scrutiny right now, so I'm not pushing for a dinner program. But if anything that we could do to keep the kids healthy and to maybe increase attendance in school, because if kids know they're getting a good, hot, healthy meal, that will help increase attendance and stuff like that. So anything that we can do as far as increasing times or do you think there's anything we can do that'll help make it easier, or just make sure that kids aren't coming to school hungry or going through the day hungry and leaving school hungry? Do you think there's anything we can do about that?
Well, one of my plans to fight that issue was going to be to implement a vending machine at schools with high latenesses for breakfast, because then we will be able to offer a last chance breakfast.
Yeah, anything that we can do, because that'll help increase attendance. Plus, like you said, I commend you doing a great job. I had read the article too that you had seen, so that was a good. Your staff and everybody else are doing a great job. I just want to commend you guys on that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Avery?
Mr. Wilson, I just had that conversation with staff this morning. We're going to be surveying the parents and students as well to kind of see if there's their thoughts about the timing of the breakfast, and maybe looking for additional opportunity for them to give us some input as to how and what we can do to provide a little bit more time for them to have that breakfast in the morning. So hopefully those results will come in pretty quickly as well. So that, again, and we are looking at surveying to try to get some input.
Okay, I appreciate that, Dr. Avery. Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Stromera Jimenez.
Good afternoon. First, I wanted to say thank you so much for the nutritional center. I saw you guys on the news yesterday. Super excited all of this is happening in our district. I did have a question about food waste, you briefly mentioned it that you're tracking it through hopefully mobile applications. And I wanted to know if there is any food waste taking place, if there are opportunities for local food pantries or for like the Bridgeport Rescue Mission to come into the school and pick those up to minimize the amount of food waste that is happening.
At the nutrition center level, we do not have any food waste. On the school level, our meals are really served through the amount of students that we're feeding, and they usually will keep a good record of it. I would have to look into how to do that, but I can get back to you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sakalovic?
Yes, good evening again, Mr. Couple of quick questions. You mentioned changing over from styrofoam to cardboard compostables. Is there a cost difference between the two?
Yes, there was a cost difference. Styrofoam is about a penny. The compostable containers are usually about 2.5 cents. But we've also reduced the amount of meal. Some of our schools were actually incorporated more plastic, and not plastic, but reusable trays. So we balanced that out between the schools. Instead of everyone using all styrofoam, some schools we actually incorporated dish machines. So they're washing their trays and reusing them. So that's how we're balancing the two. The larger schools, they'll use the compostable trays in high schools.
Awesome, thank you. And I just asked because I'm about the fiscal stuff. Yeah, I'm not too concerned about the extra cost. Is balanced out, and any cost, just so everybody realizes, any cost within the Food and Nutrition Center does not hit the operating budget. So if he's spending within his budget, he's not impacting the students' learning objectives. And also, my next question has to do with the vending machine. The automated salad bar. What's the name of the thing again? I'm sorry.
It's a Volrath Servue, SERVUE.
Okay, now I got a question about costs and maintenance of the machine.
Yes.
Because the maintenance, it looks like it might be a little more labor intensive than the traditional methods of serving salad.
No, it's about the same. It's actually a lot easier because it's a contained unit, and we have an on-site maintenance technician who handles food service repairs.
As far as cleaning it out every day, like the cheese and everything would the leftover cheese be thrown away? Each container like got to be cleaned separately, and then the nozzles would then.
Yes, they do have to be cleaned separately, but we also have backup containers, and that machine actually is a refrigerator, so it keeps everything cold. So you can actually keep it in overnight. It has a lock, and it has a digital thermometer to let you know what's wrong or if anything happens to the machine.
Awesome, thank you. And as far as cost?
The machine cost $40,000, which is actually similar to the price of a traditional salad bar that has to be fabricated and built into the ground. And then you have to purchase all of the pieces to build the salad bar and unit. This was just one piece, and it takes up less space.
And this brings up the next question. Did this come before the board for approval, the contract of $40,000?
Yes, it came last year when I asked to go out to bid for food service items. So we actually used our what is that one? We used our equipment contract.
And that was embodied within the whole food and nutrition things we approved in, was it January?
It was one in January and one the year before, because we also came out the year before with the with approval to purchase new food service equipment. That was with the initial $2 million when I started.
Right, awesome. Yeah, I ask because there's like hundreds of things that come across us, and you're aware of the current situation. I just
Yeah.
didn't know.
So it's a mix of different times I've came to the board and done things. It's just been the timeline to get things done sometimes overlaps.
All right, thank you.
All right, I don't see any other hands. Mr. Garcia.
I just wanted to take the time to really thank Keoma and what he's doing. The management team, they're very new. They haven't been with the city for more than 3 years. They've been doing an admirable job at trying to change the landscape. This is exactly what we need. We need disruption. We need to change what we're doing. And this is a perfect example. We're balancing cost along with innovation. And I tip my hat to the whole management team and to the entire staff for working through this. Everything comes with a little bit of heartache and pain and changing and how we operate. But at the end of the day, it's all about ensuring that the students have a lunch program that they can feel good about. So I'm excited for where we are, and I can't wait to see where we end up.
Thank you. Mr. Kalik, your hand is still up. I'm gonna go to Mr. Medina.
Did you call him or me?
You, Mr. Medina.
Okay. How you doing? Thank you, Mrs. Steele. Thank you, everyone, for presenting. Thank you, Madam Chair. Question: do we also? I believe I know the answer, but I wanted to put it on the record. We also supply food for the after-school programs, correct?
Correct. We provide a supper program for Lighthouse, but we can supply any after school program a supper meal as long as we receive a roster from that program.
Yeah, because I don't know if I saw anything as far as numbers or how many meals are being used or utilized by the Lighthouse programs, and what kind of meals do they get? Like, can you give me an example?
They'll get similar meals, similar lunch meals, like the grilled cheeses, popcorn chicken, meatball subs. We usually incorporate the supper meal as similar as a lunch meal. And for for meals, last school year we served 235,570 suppers. So if you look at the PowerPoint again, it's the orange on the graph.
And that number was last year, you said, correct?
Yes.
Are we trending higher, lower this year?
As of January, we have 125,000 meals. So I'm anticipating that we're going to exceed our numbers for breakfast, lunch, and supper from last year.
And how does that work against our budget? That affect our budget overall when we have an increase, or is it that's really counted in?
No, the food and nutrition department, we can only spend what we receive. So as we receive the funds from our meal reimbursements, that's how we'll operate. So if there is if we lose numbers, then we would have to reconsider how we're gonna serve meals or operate. But we're trending in the right direction.
Great. Also, just for clarity, or just for entertain myself with information here. So in a week, how is the diverse on the meals? Like Monday through Friday, are the kids in the after school getting the same meals? Are they getting 5 different meals? Are they getting choices, or how is that working in the after school program?
You have the school program, they get 5 different meals. They don't receive the same thing every day. And for the meals, we have to follow a certain guideline when planning the menu. So even for our vegetables, we can't serve baby carrots and juice all week. We can only serve juice once a week. And we'll have to serve a green vegetable, a red vegetable, and a starchy vegetable. So even French fries are considered a vegetable. We can't use that every day as a vegetable, or else it wouldn't count as a meal.
Okay, so Friday they're not getting the same meal. Twice during the week they're not getting the same thing. Like if I have meatball sandwiches, they're not getting on Thursday.
No,
that's not happening.
No, that's not how it happens. I'm not sure how we'll do popcorn chicken and then we'll do a chicken teriyaki or General Tso's chicken. So we'll do maybe a multiple chicken items in the week, but it wouldn't be the same thing back to back.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay, I had another question, but I have some answers already. But thank you very much, Victor.
Mr. Traber?
One night, I look forward to having lunch with you at one of the schools or multiple schools.
Yes, thank you for your report, Mr. Steele. I had a couple of questions you didn't mention, but I'm assuming we still do snacks in the classroom.
We offer fresh fruit in the classroom from a fresh fruit and vegetable grant. So the four times a week, the students will receive berries, fresh fruit, carrot sticks.
Yeah.
But there's no, yes, that's what
So the
they'll
answer is
receive.
yes.
Yes.
But you just said 4 times a week, not 5?
No, because the grant, how the grant works, it's 4 times a week based on delivery.
Is that at all grade levels or just elementary?
Elementary.
Through grade 8?
Yes.
Yeah.
Pre-K to grade 8.
Yeah. And then I know that, and I'm asking this because I was a 4th, 5th grade teacher. We also at Blackham, we used to have, there was a small group, very small group of students who got food before on Friday afternoon. Is that a standard program, or was that just something that was being done at Blackham?
I'm not sure. That was probably before my time, I think, but I could look into it.
It was well before your time. I'm just saying, on Friday afternoon, the security guard would go around, God rest his soul, he's not here anymore, and hand out, I don't know, a limited number of meal packet, bags for students that we know needed food for the weekend. And I didn't know whether that was an official program or an unofficial program.
I would believe that's an unofficial program, but I can look into it.
Okay, so, well, if you don't know about it, I'm assuming it was something that was done unofficially by the good people in that school who knew about kids that needed food for the weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report.
Thank you for the presentation. We're gonna move on to the discussion of possible referral to the full board for approval of the decision.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I was having my hands up. Right.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you. Go ahead.
I have a question for Mrs. Steele. Mrs. Steele, I have a question because I got concern from parents. The student, they don't want to eat the food from the cafeteria. They can bring their own food from the home, whatever parent, make for the student.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm asking you because I don't like that some teachers or staff or cafeteria say, oh, you're not allowed to bring the food from outside. If the student, they cannot eat that they don't like the food from the cafeteria, we have to respect that. For religion or allergy or they don't like it. So I want that message. You send it out to all your cafeteria. I know Dr. Avery will send it to all the staff. The students are allowed to bring the food from home. So that's why I want to do that for the record.
Yes, they are allowed, and that's not something that I would not allow. So I'll just ensure that the staff knows that anyone can bring their own meals.
Yeah, and Coach, I know that Mr. Woodson says something. I believe Ms. Tremara too, about wasting the food. We still have that same policy. Whatever food is that the student they don't take it, we cannot allow to give it to rescue pantry or whatever, or something like that. They had to waste it. We had to throw it away, mandatory anyway.
I would have to look into that, but I would suggest that it could be a safety concern because if someone did get sick, the food did come from us.
No, I understand that. Oh, perfect. I understand. And my last question for you is, and that's about the budget and its department. Let's see, you got cafeteria, the cafeteria 1. That's the way I call. And you got cafeteria 2. If the cafeteria 1 they don't come, and the cafeteria 2 do the job of cafeteria 1, they will get paid the same one, or they get paid what the cafeteria 2 did the job. You got my point?
You said if the cafeteria 1 isn't there and the cafeteria
Two.
The
yeah, and
cafeteria
then-
2 makes more than the 1.
Exactly. And
So
then
in-
cafeteria 1 is cover cafeteria 2. I believe the cafeteria 1.
Okay, yes. In their contract, if a cafeteria 2 is out, the most senior cafeteria 1 will take on that role.
But they will get paid what cafeteria 2 was doing, right?
Yes, for the
Okay.
for the work done, yes.
And that's contractual. And there's several different contracts that we have to deal with in food nutrition. But yeah, we operate by the governance of whatever contract that employee is working under.
Okay. I just want to clarify for Mr. Steele. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. No more question, Madam Chair. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Estremera Jimenez.
I just have a quick comment about potential liability issues in providing food that would go to waste rather and donating them. We can there are waivers that can be signed. So for example, if a pantry was to go to a school and pick up any food that was going to be thrown away, they can sign a waiver to hold Bridgeport Public Schools free, harmless of any harm, or to mitigate that liability issue. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there as a potential solution to that issue.
Thank you. All
We'll look into that.
Thank you.
right, the next item is discussion of possible referral to the full board, approval of the Nutrition Center bread contract.
So move, Mr. Banahan.
Well, we haven't even seen the contract. It's
Oh.
not in our, so I wanted to bring that up.
It's
We
not in
actually
the
haven't seen
package?
this. I didn't see it in the package. I just wanted to let you know. You're on mute, Mr. Steele.
Would you like me? I'll send it right now. I thought that came from the attorney. And I'm gonna put it in the chat.
You can you
Out or email it to you.
yeah, email because we don't do the chat on the call.
Okay. Okay, I sent it over to you.
I don't have it yet, but there we go. All right, I'll forward it to the board now. Like, I guess you can start. I'll email it to everybody on right now.
Well, I'm reaching out to the board for approval of this contract to go to the full board for our food and nutrition bread purchases. We recently went back out to bid for bread companies. We had one bidder. We want to award them the award letter so we can start purchasing bread. So the contract is just our new terms of agreement with Shaw's Bakery.
All right, I'm sending it now to the board. Mr. Benningham.
Yeah, what was it? Sorry, because my connection is getting, slow. You say he gonna send some contract or something to approve it, right?
Yep, it should be coming into your inbox now.
Okay, but do we have that, I know you sent that, just receive it, but we never received it that before, right? The meeting,
No, that just came to us.
all right? So, Madam Chair, whatever is spread, I don't like to approve something, I don't see it, and I don't want to read it before, because, I don't want things get, out of mistake. I know he's doing a good job, but I prefer to see the contract first and read it to be sure everything is correct. Because a lot of things, a lot of moments, you guys know I don't work like that. I don't
Mhm.
let things a moment. So that's my subjects.
And that's our
Miss-
apology. That was a
yeah.
miscue. We thought the attorneys were gonna forward that over.
Can I ask you, Mr. Garcia, what's the time? When do we need this approved by?
Kilmer, we're good for now, correct? We can wait till,
Yes, we could wait until the next meeting. I'm still it's no, but it's all right.
So my next meeting is first week of April. The next facilities committee.
Yes, that's fine because we have
Okay.
the contracts for a year and a half.
Okay,
So we have the time. I'm sorry, but I like to read things,
that makes sense. Yeah.
What we sign.
Is there a motion then, Mr. Bennigan?
I have a question first.
Yes, go ahead.
Is this contract, more or less than the existing contract?
It is less than the existing contract.
And it would take effect, you said it's for a year and a half, it would take effect,
It would take effect from the day it was issued, so right after that meeting and purchasing
approved it.
signs. Yes,
for a year and a half.
yes,
So it would not be retroactive, would be effective immediately upon approval.
correct.
Okay. And you said there was only one bidder, Chubb's Bakery.
Yes.
Okay. I have no objection to waiting till the next meeting. There's no urgency that I can.
Is there a
see.
motion from the committee?
What was the motion? Sorry.
Are you tabling it?
Yeah, table. I like to table contract until next facility meeting.
I'll second that. Mr. Colley, what's your question? Is it?
Yeah, since it's a motion, it's related to the motion. Seeing as the board meeting's on Monday, and it appears that we'll be able to capture an immediate savings. And we're gonna have to bring it back to the full board anyway. Would it be objectionable for us to take the time over the weekend to read it and bring any questions to the full board on Monday, since it's gotta go there anyway? So it's not to tie up the committee, because there's a lot of things that this committee needs to be doing in the near future. I'm just putting it
Yeah,
out there.
I don't
My
mind
committee, I
that.
don't have a vote.
I'll take back my second. So I don't know, Mr. Bennigan, do you want to just table it for, you could take back your motion and we could just put it on the next board meeting?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, so you don't take things, we have a lot of things to do, and yeah, I'll remove my motion so we can put it in the next board education meeting.
So what's your new motion? Let's make it correct here.
Okay, I make a motion to take, please correct me, take a motion to add the contract of Nutrition Center to the next board education, add it in an agenda. Are you okay with that?
I'm good with that too. Second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Any exceptions? I forgot that one. All right, so we'll just take a look over. It'll be in your packet. We'll put on the agenda for the regular board meeting. My turn, sorry. The next item on the agenda is discussion and possible referral to the full board of the facilities master plan. This is just we had the informational sessions that came out the past week. And so this is now time for us to kind of go through what those recommendations are. And I know Mr. Garcia is gonna, I think Mr. Garcia and Mr. Croft are gonna kind of go over some things with us, give us some additional information.
At this point, you know, we're excited to have both the facilities master plan and the host of recommendations out. You know, those recommendations are a framework for the board to be able to at least have a framework to work from. None of them are set in stone. Obviously, we have to get the community's involvement. You know, we have had Thought Exchange up. We've had over 1,500 interactions on Thought Exchange, so we're querying that information. So this is the beginning of the conversation. More than anything, this is about all of us working together as a singular voice and ensuring that we come up with a strategic plan on how we move forward in the school district. You know, it's great that we're going to be able to do this with facts and data, and we're excited about the potential of what's to come. PJ, I'm not sure if you have anything to add, and we do have MP Planning here if there's any questions that have come out of the 2 informational sessions.
Good evening. Yeah, just really quick. Part of our planning, you know, started back in July. So we put a lot of time. George's team, my team, both MP Planning and Studio Jade, to go through buildings, walk through schools, make sure that we can give you a comprehensive package so that you can take a look at this package and look at what the companies have come up with. And from that point, we felt that with having both companies come in and go through this, it would give us an idea and a plan for the next 10 years, next 15 years, whatever it may be, to look at some of those pain points, and to also look at some of those schools that we have been keeping up on and doing a really good job with. I'd like to thank MP Planning as well as Studio Jade for all the work that they put into this. It's been a daunting task for the team that has been involved with this. I'd like to just make a note that pretty much we've been meeting once a week with MP Planning and with Studio Jade to go through updates and go through recommendations as far as data that they needed, looking at this point of having a small team that was put together to bring in those ideas and or those programs that were happening in the district. A lot of what we found is that when we actually broke down this study and we took a look at where we had different programs, we were enlightened to see that programs were placed in certain quadrants that we've never really looked at before the study to say, hey, wait a minute, how come there is a certain number of programs in this area compared to another area? So with the team, with MP Planning and with Studio Jade, I'd like to just thank them in advance for all the hard work, and George's team and Dr. Avery and the team that was on those meetings once a week to put together and help get this plan out so that the board, community members, city, and everybody else that was involved could take a look at the findings from the documents.
Any questions?
So I'll take committee questions first. Committee members, Mr. Woodson, do you have questions?
Yes, I have a quick question. I know like a couple of weeks ago, we had approved we had made a couple of approvals for elevators in certain buildings, and Dunbar was one of the elevators. I think that we approved one of the buildings we approved elevators for. Do you think it's a good idea to move forward with that renovation? You know, seeing that the building, you know, maybe shut down, or you know, changed the the situation inside of the building. Do you think it's still a good idea to get that elevator there?
Absolutely. It's a regulatory requirement. It's ADA. Right now we're having issues. We can't get parts. So, you know, it behooves us to go ahead and make that repair or that replacement in that instance. You know, once again, all of the recommendations that MP Planning put in front of the board are recommendations. You guys may decide to go in different directions. You know, it's just a framework, but the capital work that we have in front of us is direly needed, and we've got to execute. We've already got these things scheduled out and planned out since our last meeting when you guys gave us the approval. We've got all the documents signed. We've already created schedules with the company, so we're ready to go. This will be a very busy summer. We're going to take advantage of shutdowns, but you know, the district's going to be better for it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Benningham?
No, I don't have no question at this moment. Thank you.
Yeah, I also want to reiterate what Mr. Garcia said, that these are recommendations, and it's going to be our job to really decide and look at the data and look at and also hear from the community on what direction we should go in. And so I just want to reiterate that part. Let me take questions. Mrs. Romero Jimenez.
So I want to say I've reviewed and saw all the YouTube videos, and I have to say, like, the contractors, they did an amazing job putting all this information together in a very concise and comprehensive way, and I really appreciate that. So definitely kudos to them for that, because I know it must have taken a very long time, but I do have a series of questions around the facilities master plan. The very first question is around a benefit cost analysis. So I did see that we have potential savings. However, I don't believe I saw the cost associated with it. So in order to make a good financial decision, we should truly have the comparison of both to make sure that we're making an informed decision to secure that we do get savings from the projects that are being proposed. Is that something that you guys are currently working on?
I believe there's elements of that in the report. The more detailed report may have even more information on that. For instance, you know, recommendation for new construction, it's cost avoidance in terms of buildings that may be replaced. You know, not having to expend the dollars that are in the FCA, which is the facilities condition assessment. You know, understanding that, you know, we get 80% reimbursement on school construction. So, you know, where, for instance, if a building needs $50 million worth of repairs and we decide we want to build a new building that's $125 million, we're paying 20% of that, you know, which is $25 million, and we're getting a new building. So there's a host of that. And I think those are the details that over time we'll be working through. What I'd like to do is have a placeholder on all facilities committee meetings to have these conversations, because as we delve deeper, as we get out into the community, as we start to get through, you know, the findings on the thought exchange and, you know, the recommendations that come from you and the questions that come from this body, you know, we want to incorporate all of that. But, you know, I'm not sure if MP Planning has any other details on that, but this is a working document that will continue to evolve over time.
Hi everybody. I think the question may have been around just some costs of what a new construction would look like. So as we talked about that new 750 student school in the East End versus the cost avoidance of closing some of the other schools. Was that the question that you were looking
Yes.
to get answered?
Yeah, making sure really the questions around ensuring that whatever the new school costs that we are able to, that the savings of that outweighs the cost.
Yeah, and I could get us started, and then George, if you want to pick it back up, because I know you're talking about some rough numbers there. It's still early in it, but I think when we talk about cost avoidance and we look at a facility conditions assessment, that's really there's capital renewal in there, so it's taking what's in an older building, bringing those different components up to a better state of repair, giving them a longer life. But what the capital renewal plan doesn't account for is just some natural limitations within some of the buildings themselves, especially some of the older ones where they may not be comparable educationally to, say, a school built in the last 15 or even 20 years where you have a science room that is fully plumbed, it has the technology in there, it has everything in there that's capable of delivering that education. The FCAs look at it more of roofs, mechanicals, architecture, major elements, but you're still working within the framework of that existing building itself. So you do fall a little bit behind of, if you were to make the investment, you're still not having an educational facility that can compare to, say, a newer facility where things are purposefully built. You have the space and you have the architectural design to accommodate what you're aiming to do educationally.
Yeah, and that's that 21st century education, right?
Yeah.
In these older buildings, there's a delta. We talk about equity all the time and the delivery of service to the students. There isn't an equity because in our older buildings, we can't deliver the same level of education. For instance, in some of our older buildings, we're maxed out at our energy capacity, so we can't bring in new technology or, functionally the spaces just don't allow for the movement that you need, the efficiencies that you need in a 21st century environment. So, once again, the recommendations are based on making sure that we're looking at those minute details, not only on the facilities condition side, but on the programming side also.
Yeah, and I know George and his team are working on some of the costs for some of the projects that we had proposed, and we'll be able to have those, and that'll, when they're ready, then we'll be able to make a direct comparison to, say, option that has cost avoidance tied to what new construction could look like, and you have a little better conversation around, what is the actual differences there from cost, outside of the educational opportunities, outside of the programming opportunities. One of the things that jumped out to me is just going in one of the newer vintage buildings versus some of the older buildings. Your core space is a cafeteria in the basement, a gymnasium that's not of the same size or layout of some of even the 1970s and 80s gyms in some of the older buildings. Those are all things that are not providing the same type of educational quality that some of the other buildings are. And those,
PJ, if you can, just give us a quick, because PJ broke it down a bit to me today, and we've been working so fast and furious that when he gave me the vintage of schools, it sort of really took me back to how important and impactful this study has been. So PJ, some of the vintages.
Sure. So we have 8 schools right now that are over 100 years old. Of those 8 schools, we have 3 more schools that, when we put them together, make it 11 over 90 years old. Okay. Then we go back and we take a look at, George and I pointed out today that we have 23 schools that are over 55 years old. Those 23 schools do encompass the schools, obviously, that are 90 and 100 years old. But when you're really looking at our schools, that's 23 of those that, are over, as I said before, 55 years old. So it's a lot of our schools are vintage. We have, some schools that have been obviously standing with us for a long time. Some of those schools still are in decent shape. Some of those schools, believe it or not, when we walk through, needed some work, as the study shows. I think part of the breakdown with George and I is when we started digging into the data a little bit and just looking at the overall age. I would have loved to do a little bit more of a study on, with all of that, when's the last time we put funding into these buildings to do what we needed to do inside of that. That's not something I had in front of my hands to bring out to everybody, but it would have been a nice look. I know the newer buildings and what George has done with recent construction and, you know, all the other things that go on, but would be nice to see when's the last time, you know, in one of those buildings that are 100 years old, what did we really put in and how much did we put in to those buildings?
The board actually has that info, PJ. Sorry to interrupt. That information is in the stewardship report in the facilities data sheet. So there's a column that tells you the date that the building was born and then the date that there was a renovation. And you'll see that some schools had renovations. Some of our older buildings have never been touched. But that you do have that data. And PJ, I'll make sure that you guys get that information also.
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be good to look at, because the ones that haven't been touched, the question would be, you know, especially the older buildings, what, you know, why didn't we go there? I know it's from a funding perspective. It could be a lot of other things, but it's good to see and know and bring out that some of our buildings we've targeted pretty well, and other buildings, you know, didn't get that much love. Let's put it that way.
I want to acknowledge Ms. Casimir joined the call as well a little while ago, so just want to acknowledge her attendance. Mr. Benahan.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't done with my questions. I had a few more. Sorry. I started with the loaded question first. And thank you. And I appreciate that response, because I realize if you're just looking at monetary cost benefits, it's not an apples to apples comparison, because the buildings would be serving different purposes. Next question is I noticed in the reports there were items that said immediate needs versus moderate. In the facilities budget, are those immediate needs already earmarked, or is that additional money that would be needed in order to address the building's immediate needs?
So that's going to be additional funding that's needed. We do have capital. We have capital reserve. As you know, I reported to the board in the past, you know, capital that we had during ESSER, we put it sort of in the bank in savings, understanding that we needed to execute on ESSER. We've executed on ESSER. The district is probably in its best shape it's been in a long time, believe it or not. We've got a solid foundation. Now we're executing on the capital. We bought several contracts. You know, we've got some grants that we're going to be executing. So we are picking away at those items. We have made some strategic decisions also along the way, where our buildings that weren't the 100-year vintage, but the 20 to 30-year vintage, we made several investments to bring those back up to where they needed to be. For instance, Marin, you know, we did a lot of work there to bring that building back up to, you know, a functional, solid state. JFK is another one. You know, we've done a lot of work on that site to stabilize. So, you know, when we look at a project, we say, okay, if we put money into this, what is our return on investment? You know, we look at this as a business, right? We always say to ourselves, what is the citizen? What is the resident? What is the student, the teacher, the stakeholders going to get out of this work that we're doing? And we gut check that every single Tuesday in the office. And we ensure that every single dollar that's spent is spent strategically. You know, there is a big gap. And, you know, I believe it's 50+% is, you know, year 1, 2, 3. And then, you know, we get up to 84% or something in that range for the first 5 years. But, you know, once again, when you think about the age and the vintage of these buildings and the lack of investment, to be honest, you know, I mean, you know, this has been something that's gone on for years. When you think about the age of our buildings, you know, there hasn't been a focus. And, you know, one of the things that I love to say is that education is not just what happens in the classroom, it's the facility. It's when you pull onto that site. It's when you walk through that door. It's the light that's flickering, right? It's the bathroom that is unrepairable. We have to close the gap on those things to take those distractions away from these children. So it is a very important part of the educational process.
Thank you. My last question is around the frequency of the master plan and how it will be done. So last time it was done, I believe it was over 10 years ago. Is the intent or Mr. Garcia, I see you shaking your head. I know it was a long time ago, but
Yeah.
it's the intent that a similar facilities master plan will be done every 10 years and then or yeah,
I
go
think
ahead.
I think we need to update this every couple years, 3 years, because we're going to be making investments. We're going to be doing that work. We need to capture that. We need to refocus. The decisions that you make will have an impact on the facilities master plan, right? So we have to capture those data points to ensure that we're strategically making the decisions that we need to. We need to work smarter. And having up to current data is going to help us get there. We try to do things based on data. That's so important. And I see Mr. Sokolovic shaking his head, yes, because when it comes to the fiscal end of nature, we can't do this without the proper data.
Right. And so every few years, now I know some of your needs were between 3 to 5 years. Is the intent then to have facilities folks on the ground looking at, the items that will be hitting like end of its life within the next 5 years?
We pretty much have all of that information now. It's all about the funding, right? It's all about decisions that are going to be made now, and then how are we going to offset? Where do we consolidate? Where do we close if you decide to close? Where do we build? All of those things are going to play a role on how we start to pare back those dollars that are needed to really close the gap on our condition assessment.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we would recommend, and providing everything digitally, the FCAs, all that information, and access or Excel spreadsheets, is that you can now go ahead and track, and you could use all of that data, which is the most current. It's going to be the most expansive amount of information you could have, up through the end of December, and ensure that you're using it, you're tracking it, you're adding your own columns to be able to manage it. And then you have something that's truly useful rather than just kind of like a static report, some static information. You're now using it as part of your facility management system. And that's the kind of the way that we view the master plan, is it becomes this living, breathing document. It's a constant process. If you follow the plan, great. If there's some deviations, there always are, you then can make some adjustments to it. But you're using it as a tool, and then you realize, boy, some of our information is getting pretty dated. We did a lot. Maybe we do a targeted update on some of these areas. Maybe it becomes more focused, but now this gives you a good starting point to be able to better manage what you have, better utilize all that good information in a sound system.
Thank you. That's all for me.
Thank you. Mr. Benahan?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Sham. Okay, I'm going to the point. I'm going to talk very clear. People can understand. Mr. Garcia, and Mr. Peter, you guys always do an amazing job. But I don't want to go back to the situation because you tried to say a lot of things. But where is the parent involved in this situation? We talk about everything, but I don't hear the word parent and students. You know how I am with parents and students. I know we have to fix a lot of schools. I love to all school. We have to be new schools. But, trying to be closing, let's see, Bridge School, Edison, Hall School, Dunbar. We have the new school. That's fine. I'm okay to have new school, but let's have it processed before anything happens, because I don't want to have the drama we had before. Absolutely not. I know, Dr. Avery. I know you was coming. So I just want to be sure that we had to talk perfect. I had to use the word perfect with parents. Process, protocol, the plan. Why the reason? Come invite the parents. Come invite the city council. They go crazy too, because I hate city councils that complain, but they don't know what's going on inside the school. What is the reason? We're trying to close, let's see, any kind of school because of the health issue about our students and staff and parents. It's the safety, the most important. And I know there's a lot of things going on. I know a lot of people's getting crazy because I've heard the word closing school, but I don't want the parents to understand we're going to close school like crazy without not do the protocol, the process and everything had to be, you know. And the reason, and I'm saying this because I was in New York this weekend, and trust me, guys, that I have received phone calls and text messages like crazy. And I said, no, that's not the way. That's not the way, because they showed your master plan, Peter Garcia, and people go crazy. I said, no, that's not the way it is. So that's the reason we have to prepare very good and talk something clear and to the point for the parent to understand why the reason we're doing this, the process and protocol. And the most important, like I believe everybody agree, is the safety of the students, is the safety of the parent, the safety of the staff, and better education. Because we don't want to close the school and then the other school think, oh my God, all these students come to the school, we're gonna be crazy. It's a lot of students, a lot of staff, parents gonna upset. No. Before we close any school, the community, parents, students, you know, whoever organizations outside, they have to understand. We don't want to have that problem we had before. You know, I don't want the parents go crazy because they think we close all this school and I know you throw your master plan. They went like they don't understand. You know, you got my point, guys. So I know you guys do an amazing job. I know everything is have to be the way it is because we're not going to make the mistake we had before. And also we have to think. And I know Dr. Every know that about transportation. When we're trying to do that situation, we have to think the transportation money. Everything is money because I know nothing is free. You know, I'm glad it's happening so the state, they can know nothing is free and everything costs money and everything what we will have to go through. You know, so I can't wait to stay, you know, be involved in this situation too. So we have to think very good. I don't want things get information like that because when they bring information out, parents they don't understand something. Some understand and others think, oh, where my son is going? Why? They think transportation. They think my job, I'm going to be late. Who's going to pick up my son? You know, all that. So we have to think and make sure we have a plan and we let them know the parents because we talk about everything, this, that, everything, data, location, this, the money, but I want to be parents be involved. I want parents, all these schools and everything, wherever we're going to school, parents have to be involved. We can talk to them, you know, and also, Dr. Every, with all respect, we don't need to have so much community forum, all right? Maybe I can say one or two because when we have too much, sometimes parents get confused and the information go out sometimes. I'm telling you this because this is what we got from outside. And remember, guys, you guys working inside the building. Us as a board members, we're more outside and we can know and we get information more from the parents. And that's why as a board member, you know, we let you know what's going on. Because as I say, you work more inside, you're doing the job inside. Us more as a elected we are, we had to listen to our community. So I just want to say that for the record. Thank you very much, Mr. Garcia. If you have any question or concern, just let me know, please. Thank you.
I'm just gonna comment a bit on what you said, Mr. Benahan. There will be some information for the community on those dates, March 31st, April 1st, and April 2nd, or April 2nd, April 3rd, 31st, April 2nd, and April 3rd. And from my understanding of this, and Dr. Avery or Mr. Garcia, you can add on to this, but there's no closures happening this year or even next school year from these recommendations.
Yeah.
And if that were to happen, that's the board's decision. And if that was to happen, there would be public hearings at those schools for the parents to give feedback. So that's part of the policy that we would have to follow, making sure that there's public hearings for any school that if we have to close. But I'll let Mr. Garcia explain a little more.
Thank you.
Well, I'll let Dr. Avery take it because.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Dr.
Yeah,
Avery.
I think I just want to make something clear. Guys, this whole process that we've taken on is really trying to make sure that the board gets a very informed data set to be able to make that decision. The process is we're at the preliminary stages of getting the information out to the board, to the city that paid for the study, to the delegates that we may be, looking for to go advocate for dollars at the state. So the process was to get the information to the board, and then we're going to go out to the community communities as for several different community forums to really get input from the community. We got surveys going out, thought exchanges going out, and then whenever the board decides what they want to do with some of these facilities, then we have to go to those individual sites, get the input from those particular parents about that particular recommendation from the board, and then we would move forward to finalizing the recommendation on behalf of the board. So again, we have all intentions to be able to make sure that our parents, our community members are in the middle of all of this. But again, this is preliminary because the board has to have the information before the community or city or whatever. So that's the process that we're in now. There's a lot of clarity that needs to be happening. This is the first meeting for that clarity. And I think it's important. So, and we wanted to make sure that the board had a voice of the processes that we started, being able to help, give clear directions of what needs to happen. But all those things, Mr. Banahan, that you talked about, we have every intentions to make sure that clarity is given and that we make sure we take baby steps, because we don't want what happened last year to happen in this process that we're doing now. So it's going to be clear. We're going to get the voice of the parents. We're going to go down to get the voice from the kiddos and teachers and administrators as well. It's just, this is the beginning. And there's a lot more to come. George, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the most important thing to us is community and making sure that everyone has a voice. You'll hear us say it over and over. That's the mantra of this, right? That we're not going to be able to get to where we need to go in silos. This is everyone working together on the same page, moving the ball based on data and facts. And it's just not facilities. It's also, the work that PJ's done and be able to move boundaries and figuring that out and balancing schools. There's so many different aspects to this. This is why we want to have a placeholder on the facilities committee meeting. And we're always available for any answers that you may need. You really are the voice box in the field. You are the ones that are going to be able to give additional information to the community when they have those questions. That's why we want to arm you with all the information that we have right now.
Thank you, Dr. Avery. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. And remember, as always, we're a team, and together we can make it different. Good communications are great successful. Nothing is perfect, but at least we have the communication out because I don't want drama. We want the parents, we understand what we're doing for the best for our children. Thank you. Appreciate your information.
I'm going to finish up with the committee members, and then I'll go to Mr. Sokolovic after Mr. Woodson. So, Mr. Woodson, go ahead.
Okay.
Committee members go first. It's our committee, and then you guys can go.
Okay, really quick. This information had came out a couple of weeks ago. I had got the email. So, if you guys got to take the time, read the information is out there, and we have to be the one. It's not Dr. Avery's job to go to the community and, get this thing, try to, make this thing. What is he? I mean, he has a good idea of what's going on, but as board members, that's one of our few jobs is to interact with the community and bring the community's information back to Dr. Avery. Dr. Avery shouldn't have to go into the community and explain this plan. That should be our job. Dr. Avery has enough on his plate. Not that, like I said, not that he can't do it, not that he's not capable of doing it, but he has enough on his plate. We should be able to take some off of his plate. And so, and Albert, you're very active in the community. You should be the one going there asking the community what they think and taking their information back to Dr. Avery.
I agree.
Don't expect those people. Those people are busy people. They have a busy job. They have a lot on their plate right now. We should be the one in the community, getting the information.
As I said, together we can make the difference.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Sokolovic?
Yeah, I have several questions. I would have more. I would just like, before a meeting like this happens, to let us know it's on the agenda, because I did not see this on the agenda until I was informed it was on the agenda, because the agenda was revised about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I would have liked more time to prepare more questions. But just going forward, I would like a little bit more warning for.
It was revised yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday at 1:30 p.m. is when we got notified. And constructive receipt of the notice that something like this is going to be on the agenda would be helpful, because not everybody checks 100 times a day to see if the portal has been updated.
Mhm.
So that would be appreciated. Okay, now my first question was switched up by something I just heard for the very first time. It was just said that we do not intend to close any schools in the 25-26 school year. Is that a correct assertion, Dr. Avery? Yes or no?
Did I say that?
No, Ms. Perez said that.
I said that based on if those are recommendations, and it's gonna be the board's decision to close or not to close. So right now, we don't intend because we haven't made that decision yet.
So right now, the possibility of closing schools exists in 25-26 if we take.
If the board decides on it.
Right, if the board decides what's in this plan is actually, and their recommendations are actually good recommendations, and we want to take their recommendations, the group is recommending we close some schools immediately. And that is, while it is our decision, yes, but the recommendation is not to wait until the 26-27 school year to move on any of this. Is that correct, Dr. Avery? And the firm?
It's all about the timing of when the decision is made. Then based on that decision being made, a timeline will be, devised to be able to figure out when that's going to happen. The closer we get to the end of the year, so if a decision is made in May, there's no way that we're going to close a school for the upcoming August. There's no way that that's not even feasible to do. So we have to really look at and kick that out. It's all about how we're going to, I don't want to rush this. This is a delicate situation. A lot of decisions need to be made. So I think that's part of having deeper conversations. So if there's a decision to be made, say April and May, you have to put a timeline on that. So once the decision is made, then we can put a date and timeline on that to kind of make sure that we're in line with getting everything's orchestrated to close. And so there's a lot of variables there. So I'm not going to make that decision, or even advise the board to make the decision if we don't have the necessary, elements to make a very clear timeline to make it happen.
Right, absolutely. And I raised this at finance, that there's a very tight timeline if we're doing things this year. And it would have been nice to hear that that might not even be a possibility. It would have been great I would love to go out in the community and tell them, we don't need to close any schools until the 26-27 school year, and our budget will be totally balanced. I would love that. What would be the condition of our budget if we wait another year to do all that we need to do?
There's still a lot of factors with that also, Mr. Skovic, because depending on the additional dollars from the city, the state, and some additional dollars the state may provide the district, that will help to solidify, how much deficit we'll have the 2026 or 2027. So there's a lot of different factors as well. So, but if we're looking to, as a board, if you guys are looking to say, if we close some things now, it may save $5 million or $10 million. All those factors still have to be discussed. Because it's the first that we've gotten it, and the board hadn't even made any decisions on anything. You heard recommendations, but again, so there's a lot of factors. Again, there's a lot more conversation that need to be had in order to move this forward and to give you a better financial gauge as well.
Right. I just want the community to be absolutely clear on what may or may not happen and the decisions that we're making. I'm not advocating for closing schools this year. I'm not advocating for closing schools at all. Best case scenario, they come and give us the $27 million we need to balance the 25-26 school year and the $12 million that we need the next school year. But if that's not a reality, we got a whole different ball of wax. All right, so now I'll get to some of the questions. My first question has to do with the demographic studies. First, I would like to commend the groups. I went through most of the buildings on the demographic studies, looked at the space, and it all seems to be very professionally done. I've been through both buildings from bowels to STEM. And yeah, the condition reports are viable. But the demographic studies, how do we go from, I'm having trouble wrapping my mind around a shrinking population when the last 3 years we're growing. We've got several new projects coming online, including a new project they just got a demolition permit for on, I can't recall where it is, and a couple on a senior center getting converted, and Steel Point coming online in the next couple of years with multiple buildings, and we've been shrinking. And how are we going to shrink over the next 10 years?
I can answer that question. So as part of our demographic study, we've canvassed the community's demographics, building permits, what's getting constructed, what's been constructed, the students generated out of those. Future development is slow coming in Bridgeport. You do have a couple projects, but you don't have the number of projects in number, type, and bedroom count and scale that, say, Stanford, Norwalk, some of the other communities in Fairfield County have. So I know we get focused on some individual projects. You've declined pretty significantly in enrollment over the last probably 12 years. We're seeing a little bubble in the high school now, which is tied back to your kindergarten cohorts that were 2010, 2011, 2012. What's really causing the continued decline is that your elementary school has just smaller cohorts now that are matriculating up into the high school. So, and I could share my screen if someone who will give me the give me the permissions to do so. I have this one chart that I think really kind of answers that question, Joe, if I could. But you know, it's really a function of in-migration, and it's net in-migration. We do have a movement of students. There's movement in, movement out all the time. But your net in-migration isn't overcoming your net out migration every single year. This year was a bit of an anomaly. You had a little bit more net in-migration. We saw it at the high school level. But across the board, it wasn't there at every grade level. We follow the state's methodology. They require you to do a cohort survival for any school construction grant. That's the methodology that we follow. I've been doing projections for over 20 some years now. I think it's 25 years now. And, you know, tracking our work, especially in urban districts, within each given year, we're plus or minus 1% accuracy. So I know it's a surprise to some, but I think one of the factors to consider, especially when we started this work, and I've seen it in the past, is some of the new immigration policies and what we're seeing over the next several years is probably going to slow down immigration, not only in Bridgeport nationally, but also we're going to see that probably in the next 2 or 3 years. I recall going back about 8 years or so ago from Trump's last presidency, we saw an abrupt slowdown in Danbury, Norwalk, where I was working at the time, for about 2.5, 3 years, where immigration really slowed down. So I think that also may result in slightly lower enrollment than what we're projecting.
You should be able to share now.
Oh, I see it. It just popped up. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, so this chart really kind of says it all, where we kind of track the colorized enrollment across the board, and we can look and say, you know, the enrollment pressures we're feeling now at the high school, hopefully everybody can see it, where we have some of these much larger cohorts. That's really tracking back to when we had much larger kindergarten cohorts. You can see these kindergarten cohorts in 2010 through really 2014. They were large. They were 1,800, 1,900. Over the last several years, you know, we're 1,500 kindergarten cohorts that are matriculating through. So as you kind of follow that wave of orange and red colors, those move from the upper left down to the lower right. And so when we talked about 5,700 students in the high schools, you know, over the next couple of years, and then that's dropping off, the reason why that's really dropping off is due to the fact that you just have smaller grade cohorts replacing the larger cohorts as they move through the high school. So it's really kind of like a shift a little bit, where you've been seeing growth over the last few years in the high school, which we see here clearly. But then that growth is going to level off and then be replaced by a decline as these smaller cohorts move their way on through into the high school.
And then you add to that a little bump in the pre-K in the last 2 years.
Yeah, and pre-K is, you know, a grade. It attracts people. But pre-K is not really demographically driven. It's more of a function of if you provide the seats, they will get filled in every district, unless, you know, we become a state that has a policy or a district that has a policy on universal pre-K. Then it becomes a much better indicator. But really, what we're seeing, you know, even outside of this year with the state change at the 9th hour for the kindergarten start times, which is a little bit lower than we anticipated, we're still looking at, you know, much smaller cohorts moving through.
No, I agree. I just know.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah, Mr. Scarlett.
Yeah, please. I'm not done. Yeah. Okay. Now, speaking of the kindergarten cohorts going down, that's been factored in because not all our schools have pre-K seats. That's all been factored in. But the pre-K, because we get more students than that are in pre-K arriving into our schools that don't go to our public schools. They'll go to a private pre-K or no pre-K and then come into the kindergarten year. That's all factored in.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all. That happens in a lot of places. We're not, unfortunately, we're all not unique, but it's one of those things where, like I said, if you can get if we ever get to the point educationally where, you know, we have the funding budgets and space, that would then become a much better indicator, right? And a much better attractor.
Yeah. So Mike, if I could intervene just for 1 second, you know, I think the number that always startles me is we have that extra 6,200 students who live in Bridgeport but do not go to a Bridgeport public school.
Yeah.
At any time, those 6,200 students, you know, at this point, depending on whatever grade level, I think high schools, we're looking at about 2,700 of those students who are either going to charter, parochial, private, you know, school choice, wherever they may be going. That's a number that I had given MP planning just so that they can be cognizant of the possibilities of at any time, if something happens, children can migrate back to the Bridgeport public schools.
Yeah, PJ, and that's great to bring that up because remember we were talking, and it may have been back in September, October, I can't even, it was definitely early fall sometime where we had done an analysis where we started tracking back and forth based on state IDs. And we do see that movement back and forth between private, parochial, charter back into the public schools. And, you know, that's something that becomes a bit of a challenge, too, because as you start to see these different offerings pop up, it becomes a competition for the universe of students that are in Bridgeport, right? You know, if something were to happen to some of these other institutions, then you would likely see greater enrollment in Bridgeport, right? But if also you see opening of additional other offerings, other schools, then you would see a potential erosion into some of your students. So that becomes a little bit fluid in that number where it's really, you know, it's not like it was a long time ago where you didn't have all these other competing organizations for your students. You have a handful of parochial schools, you know, and they competed for students. It's a much different landscape today, I think, to put it simply.
Okay, now I'd like to move on to the facility side. I'm not advocating for one school closed or no schools closed or any schools closed with my questions. It's just about the plan and how it's been presented to us. If you recall, we developed through surveys the guiding criteria. And one of the short-term guiding criteria is seek opportunities to consolidate facilities where possible if determined that reducing the number of facilities is necessary. Efforts should be made to reduce disproportionate impact upon any one community. I'm bringing this up because the original plan by the former superintendent had 3 schools in one neighborhood closing. This new presentation swaps out Beardsley and Bryant, bringing basically the east side of our district with 4 school closures, potential closures rather than 3. And how is that decision made to swap out Bryant and Beardsley?
I think if I can, these once again are recommendations. Just looking at the area and the potential of creating a new school at a 750 student capacity, we looked at that area. So what we're doing is bringing a 21st century school online in that part of town in the one area that you can build on.
Mhm.
But once again, that is a recommendation, and you know, it's framework for you guys to figure out what we need to do moving forward, helping us set that.
And George, if I may help answer the question, we didn't really see it as we saw it more as a smart business decision from a cost avoidance standpoint through a replacement of a school. It would be one thing to close the schools and then say we're going to infill classroom spaces throughout all of your schools with students from the closed schools. We saw it as an opportunity to be able to improve the learning environments through a new school similar in size, through the new Winthrop School that was actually taking a look at the ed specs for that, looking at what that early design conversations look like for that school. What would it make sense on the site that we had an opportunity to be able to look at? And we see it as not a straight up consolidation, but more of a replacement. We have sites that are smaller. You know, obviously you're not going to be able to construct a new school. It doesn't meet the state standards for siting schools on any of those sites. So to be able to have that opportunity to be able to have a replacement school and have a building that's going to have that 30, 40-year life from a financial decision and an operational decision made a lot of sense, especially when you look at a school that would have between 85 and 95 students per grade. You have enough sections to operate efficiently rather than operating several small schools inefficiently where your class sizes are all over the place. It was really a decision based on the FCAs. It was based on the amount of use those schools are seeing. And it was based on our walkthroughs and our own visuals of the schools. We walked through probably 70 schools in the last year alone throughout all of our client communities. And several of the schools in that neighborhood were memorable to me, very memorable to me.
All right, follow up. Has any redistricting scenarios been run that could spread the pain equitably across the district between the north end, south end, east end, and west end, if we choose to close schools, to fill the new potential Harding to capacity, or even while waiting for the new Harding? Because if the schools are closed, I'm not going to say consolidate. Consolidate is kind of misleading. We're actually closing schools, making more schools into less schools. So those are school closures. I want to be clear with my language with the community that we're considering school closures, and we're using the word consolidation to make more into less, so there'll be less schools. Just want to be clear on that. Lost my train of thought.
So I can answer that, Mr. Sokolovic. Right now, the original plan with the former superintendent, my office did look at a redistricting breakdown for schools that were closed. During this plan, we did not have any discussion with MP Planning about any redistricting at this point, except for one of the issues that we have at the new Bassick and BMA, and it wasn't a redistricting. It was just discussing what we were going to do with the overflow of some of our students where that building was already over capacity before it started. As we said before, the recommendations that were set forth is part of our discussion was you can't condense without expanding in Bridgeport. So you have to have a thought process of looking at facilities that may require us to do some work on, and other facilities at this point that we really wanted to look at if we had a chance to put a new building, because space is so vast, where could we apply this building and in what area could we possibly place it so that it would be, a place that we could possibly look to put other schools. But, since it is the board who is making their recommendations, and we wanted to give you the recommendations of the company, We did not go into any type of redistricting scenario throughout the district with MP planning.
Yeah, that being said, as I recall, what was presented to us, the redistricting that was done was redistricting them to everybody from those schools to other nearby schools, but it wasn't a comprehensive redistricting of every single school to, like, say, get every
Correct.
school at 80% capacity.
Correct.
And I think that would be useful for us to run a couple of different scenarios. I don't know how labor intensive it is, if it's just a computer program with an if-then scenario. I would like to see what would happen if we swap out schools to original schools suggested. If one school's on the east side, one school's on the west side, one school's on the south side, and redistribute all those students so every school has at least 80% capacity and none over 100% capacity, or vice versa. So everybody gets treated fairly no matter what the outcome is of this. I mean, because why should my son and the people who live around me not share in increased class size, while those very neighborhoods, that very one single neighborhood, is going to suffer increased class size, increased buildings, increased population in that one mega school, while all these other little schools get to stay in these other neighborhoods and not considered for closure.
Can I interject there? Because it's my understanding that they wouldn't all be going to that one school. There's other schools, and that within those, should we look at those 4 schools that were recommended, they be redistrict within the east side schools, and not all students will be going to that new east side facility.
So yeah,
But if I don't know if somebody wants to confirm that, but that was my understanding. Whatever.
Point of information, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Let's be clear, this is the East End over here.
East End.
I understand that, but it does take
Yes.
part of the east side, including Beardsley. It's part of the east side, and it's labeled on the facility master plan as the east side school.
Right. Yeah, do you want to get confirmation of what you just said?
Yeah, I was thrown off, but I don't know if either Mr. Croft or Mr.
All of that we have to take all of that into account. Redistricting, the new building. I mean, everything. This is why we've ensured you had all of the data possible to make the decisions.
And as far as I want to go to Mr. Stormera's point on cost benefit analysis, and that, and I think one of the facilities guys mentioned that it's not only cost benefit of funding, but programming. Most studies I've seen and looked at, small schools are better for inner cities and poor areas because it builds a sense of community, and the mega schools are a little better for more well-to-do areas. Have we taken those studies into account when proposing this mega school?
Well, this is not a mega school. I mean, when I think of mega schools, I think of Vitala, these Blackham, for instance. Those are mega schools where you have 1,000+ students in them. 750 is sort of the wheelhouse right now for school construction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that 750 K8 is probably the most efficient model for a K8 school. That's what you're seeing being built most commonly in urban districts. And the reason it seems larger is if you're drawing a lot of schools in Connecticut are typically K5, K4, K6, fewer K6 nowadays, and those typically come in about 500. And you add the 3 extra grades and it gets you right around that 800 student. It all comes down to how you design it and how you operate it, how you be able to separate the grades of students through thoughtful design and making it feel like a smaller learning environment. I think getting back to that earlier question of, if we were to just reshuffle the decks across the board with all your buildings now in the elementary, you're about 80% utilization. I think when we talked about it, when we look at things, to me, the most pressing issues that you're facing right now are your capital needs, and just balancing enrollment across all your schools doesn't do anything to address your capital needs in the long term. I think that really needs to be tackled, starting, this next year, being able to have that plan in place. And if you were to look at what that East End school would look like, school construction at best would be an occupied school. And George, correct me if I'm wrong, probably 4 years out, 5 years out. Grant application, 18 months design, 18, 20 months construction, occupation at the beginning of a year.
Mhm.
You would never go ahead and do a redistricting now that far in advance of a school construction project. You would largely take a look at the enrollment across the board and then begin to balance enrollment once you know the number of facilities you're going to have as part of that school construction program.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years, exactly.
Yeah, we would never recommend, unless there was extenuating circumstances, to go ahead and just comprehensively redistrict before you begin implementing a construction program and a master plan. Because ultimately what will happen is you'll be either wed to what you're doing now because of the community, or you're going to be moving people more than once, moving families and children numerous times if you redistrict in advance of implementing a master plan. So from a process standpoint, our experience, it's really not the best order of operations.
Right. I don't disagree with that. And that's one of the problems I had with the initial plan, was doing the three stages. So, but how does that fit with, if we were to move this year or next year, we can't redistrict into Harding, so we're going to have to redistrict twice. Once the new Harding's built, we're going to have to redistrict to fill that building, and we're going to have to redistrict to move the children that any schools that are closed are waiting for their new school to be built. Correct? Unless we wait 4 to 5 years to do anything until the building's up.
I think pending on the school, and whatever schools we're going to bring into the new Harding or the East Side site, some of it, because the school size is so small at this point, some of it is, I guess, a little bit easier to maneuver around, pending on again the decision of the board. For us, any mass redistricting that you're looking at right now, we don't recommend that. We don't recommend a mass redistricting around the city of Bridgeport. Yes, there are some buildings that are not utilized to the fullest capacity that they could be. There are other means around that. There are other things that we can do programmatically to probably help put some programs into the buildings to get those numbers up a little bit. But I would not recommend, and Mike, you're the expert that's here, but I would not recommend a full redistricting for Bridgeport Public Schools. But go ahead, Mike, you're the expert.
Thanks, PJ. If we didn't go ahead and do facility condition assessments, really understand what your capital needs are, and this was strictly about a process where you're trying to better utilize enrollment without any school construction, or better utilize your space without school construction, then that becomes something totally different, which it's not. You have very clear needs, and we were trying to frame out how best to tackle those needs. And I think one of the biggest questions that we had, and we've been talking about, in order to facilitate school construction, you have to have viable school facilities to be able to swing kids into. Once you shutter a school and it's no longer in an educational use, then it's difficult to get it back into an educational use. So I think it's to be able to have a thoughtful and swing space plan when you're tackling the school construction. We proposed some ideas on occupied renovation. This is master planning level. But should a building become no longer needed between now and when you're actually in the throes of the school construction, an educational building can be retired and put forth as swing space as you work towards the next step of that. And once you are committed to certain levels of school construction, we would then recommend to be starting that conversation on what that school redistricting looks like. What areas should be moved? How does it align with the swing space plan? How does it align with the construction plan? To ensure that students and families aren't overly impacted. We're not moving people more than once. We're going to minimize the disruption, and it's going to be done in a really well laid out, thoughtful manner.
All right, now that final point question, and we're sure we're going to discuss this more and look at the transportation costs and everything else going forward. I don't want to take up too much time tonight. Dunbar School. Dunbar School is listed as medium needs on the facilities master plan, yet it's still recommended to consolidate, which is taking away a fourth school in that 5-mile radius, not because of the facilities condition. Now, if Hall, Edison, or any of those other schools are listed as closures, that's one of the closest schools to them. Can we not potentially fill that up and not take away a neighborhood school from the neighborhood children that is not in disrepair?
I think Dunbar we left intentionally open. We agree that it is in moderate need. There's some good components there. It's just really underutilized. I'll be honest with you. It just has a lot of space that is not used to its fullest, to be honest with you.
Right. And,
I think
right. To further that honesty, if we were to redistrict to take care of that underutilization, that would be something that would help out the school and remain open.
Into Dunbar, I think you could definitely help out utilization in that entire area, but it needs to be a thoughtful process, right? If you're going to put students into Dunbar as part of a near-term consolidation of a building, then would those same students move into the school that you're having the construction program in? And I think, then you're looking at the boundaries in a two-step process, right? And we definitely want, so it gets.
Yeah, I think it's good. I don't see any way around the two-step boundaries unless we're holding off on closing a single school until we got a new school built. Can somebody explain to me how we can hold off on moving people twice without a new school built and keeping all the schools open?
I think Mr. Sokolovic, for us, and I'm hearing what you're saying, we're going off board recommendations. Right now, the company gave you some recommendations that they set forth. I think for us, if we have guidance from the board on exactly what you're looking at and what's the consensus of the board and where we're looking to go, those things that we need to do can be updated or modified or looked at, at a sense to where we can actually do what it is that we're being asked to do. I don't think we're looking at every single scenario that could possibly happen because we're not sure what the board is going to recommend to us for us to do. Once we're on a path where you guys guide us on what it is that you see and what we need to do, I think from that process, we can start giving you some answers to those questions by getting in and getting dirty a little bit with that data to be able to speak to you about it.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much. I don't mean to seem aggressive. I'm just trying to be forthright, get all the questions out because I'm not sure if I'm going to see you guys again or we're going to have these opportunities for such a in-depth conversation. So I just want to try to get it out as much as I can. That's all the questions I have for now. Thank you.
Mr. Traber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I didn't think I heard the answer to your question, which is when you talk about the new pre-K to 8 school on the old Harding site as a 750 student school, where are the other students going? Because the total population of the 4 schools that you're talking about to populate that new facility is about 1,000 students. So where you said they wouldn't all go to that facility.
You asked me that?
No, you
Oh.
asked that question and I didn't
Oh.
hear.
Well, I know, like,
I didn't hear an
I'm
answer
sure
to
Mr.
your
Garcia, I'm sure Mr. Garcia probably can answer, but like, I know Beardsley, for instance, that's in a location where students live in the Hooker area or the Marin area.
Right.
Dunbar,
So
Tisdale, you know.
I wondered if that's what they were, what their intent, if they had any thoughts on that. I didn't hear.
Yeah,
that.
our intent was, depending on the timing of school construction, we would recommend looking at that quadrant of the city, and you probably look at a larger redistricting for that in order to populate the school, and be able to make some adjustments to boundaries to be able to look at, say, likely school construction 4 years from now, right? Look at the enrollment, look at utilization, look at where special programs are, and utilize the space better to be able to fill out the school to the design capacity, and then make any adjustments necessary to improve utilization across the board.
Yeah, and I think Mr. Traber, for just
Good
us, when we looked at a school that can house 750 children, which is pretty much the standard, as we all know, our job was not to make that decision. Our job was to say, we have a school. We know that some of the buildings in that area are those schools that are over 100 years old. The proposal was going to be that this is an area where we can put a 750 student building, and with putting that building, it was going to be the board to recommend how we do that, what we do. If that's the site, because there isn't, as George will tell you, there isn't a lot of land around where you can build a new school. And throughout Bridgeport, when we really looked at it, there wasn't a lot of places in other areas of town where we could really build either. So, if we were to do that and we were granted that, space, that would be a place where we can place a building where we could accommodate 750 children in that school.
Well, I understand this. I heard what you said about 750 students. I'm a teacher who taught at Blackham with 1,100, 1,200 students, and I think Blackham is a wonderful school. So I don't agree with the thought that that's a horrible thing, 1,000 students in a pre-K to 8 school. But 750, I understand, is more desirable. So I'm not opposed to it. I hadn't heard the 750 number till tonight. And so that meant less. When I added up the numbers in the current schools, it was more than 750. So I hadn't heard the answer to the question. I know the schools that Ms. Perez just said, the Hooker or Marin, the Tisdale or Barnum, are the closest schools to where they are. The next question is, you mentioned at the very outset, Mr. Garcia, that we're beginning the conversation with thought exchange. I know that when we have the initial community meetings at the end of the month, beginning of next, we will have the first face-to-face, human interaction. I want to go on record as saying I think thought exchange is a horrible method of interaction. I have found the last time we did a thought exchange survey that after about 20 to 30 interactions, I grew bored because there were 500 questions or comments to interact with. It becomes impossible to interact. So I just want to say that, I remember when we first looked at thought exchange, I remember how it seemed to offer this miraculous way for humans to interact with each other through an AI. And it's just overwhelming. Somebody puts a comment out there and you can interact with somebody else's comment and your own comments get interacted with, and it just gets overwhelming. at some point when you see that there's now 150 to 200 comments to interact with, and it becomes people give up on interacting with other people's comments. I think so. Hearing what people say at personal meetings and what Ms. Perez said earlier is going to be the most critical thing. I think Mr. Skolovic mentioned it, and certainly Mr. Benahan did. When we end up moving to the public interaction and the public discussions, those will be critical to us. PJ, at the very beginning, we discussed looking at the distribution of special needs classes.
Yes.
And if it's in this mound of information, and I admit I've been away for a week, so I have gone through the immediate packets as quickly as I could, but the mound I haven't. Is there an analysis that shows the distribution of special needs classes throughout the city somewhere in this packet that you can direct to, that I can look at after tonight's meeting?
I can get you, I mean, we have maps in the office also of all of the special ed programming. I can get that to you definitely by tomorrow. I can get you all the maps so you can take a look at it.
Because you were going to look at the distribution of special needs classes throughout the city to see if there was any concentrations, inappropriate concentrations of classes at certain schools or certain areas of the city.
Absolutely. Mike, I mean, you could speak to that.
In here, or do we have that in what we already been given, or you need to get it to us?
PJ, I have what we prepared back in, dare I say, October. So it's current, and I know with the
I don't care if it's October or today. It's going to be, this school year is appropriate. I just wanted to know if we looked at that.
Yes,
we did in smaller packets.
Yeah,
and I actually the mega book.
Yeah,
I actually broke it down by quadrant between Rise, Soar, or Rise, Leap, and regular resource. It was included in that giant
64 page file.
Yeah, it's actually it's slide 52 in that giant 64 page slide deck. And then on slide 53, we did the same exercise for bilingual and ESL rooms broken down by quadrant. And with that, we looked at the number of rooms as well as the number of students that were served by those programs.
Okay, and that's in a slide deck that we got that's the mega book.
It's in the mega book, yeah.
All right, I'll take a look at it there. Thank you. Next question. I know, George, if I recall the earlier discussions, and I do understand the siting problem in our city, because I remember when Ed Gomes and Max Medina and Bob and all these guys were on the school committee, they looking at Bataya and other places that they set up schools, trying to find clean sites in our city. We talked about the old Harding site as a clean site. I know I looked at, the Bellarmine College, junior college is one I liked in this neighborhood too, but the funding source, if I recall that you were talking about a federal funding source.
No, it will be city bonding with, going through the school construction grant method. We would look to build something highly efficient, which we would have partnerships with technical support through the Department of Energy. And we have a partner at UConn also. But, we're still, we're working through the details of finalizing budgets and site plans and things like that, just to have something for you guys to look at and understand what the true cost will be. But, it'll be city bonding. I think, MP Planning did a great job of showing us all the different kickers and opportunities within the grants where you can sort of get additional percentage points. One of the things that is a hot topic right now is pre-K. We will look to build a robust pre-K in that building because we need it in the district. Right now, we can't accommodate the need for pre-K throughout the district because we don't have the classrooms and bathrooms. So these are opportunities. When we look at opportunities, look at it strategically to not only elevate, but also fill the gap and where the needs are. So this building would be highly efficient. I would love to build a net zero, one of, there aren't any in urban school districts. If not, net zero, elements of net zero. And that gives our delegation the ability to go to the state and say, listen, we get 80%, but because we have a robust pre-K and we're building a highly efficient building, we'd like to get 90% on the program. So now if, let's say the program's $140 million or $100 million, we pay 10 cents on the dollar. Right.
Yeah,
This is the way that we're looking at what we're doing
that was
moving forward.
My question was, I thought that was federal money you were looking at. And given what's going on in Washington, I was concerned about the reliability of that.
We'll stay local.
Okay, well, that was my concern. So that's where I was coming from. That makes me feel better. The reliability. Where is this? You mentioned it earlier. The tracking. I don't remember whether it was George or PJ. Is it in the mega book? The births and maintenance data info on each building. You mentioned having the information that
I could get that to you.
No, did you say it was in the is that in the big book too?
No.
Oh, okay. I was just, if you had given it to us, I was going to take a look at it out of curiosity.
Sure. Yeah, I can send that to you.
If you can get that to us, I would appreciate it, PJ.
I will.
Okay. Because it is upsetting when two things to us, when we have built newer buildings in the last 10 years or 20, 15 years, trying to go back, like Bataya and the problem we have with mold, or some of these other schools where we built new schools and then had significant problems with a new school, and you think, what the heck? And we're now doing Winthrop, which is the second time we've renovated Winthrop, and we haven't taken care of other schools in other neighborhoods. It's upsetting to some of us. So as you say, we wouldn't be in this predicament if it was done right the first time. And so we want to do right. I know, and George, because it's going to come at us, that some of the local elected officials are going to argue about new versus renovated in my neighborhood. And I've heard it in some of the responses tonight, and it's going to come up. And so we need to be prepared for that. The advantage of new versus renovated and keeping the old, smaller neighborhood schools versus that. So I just want to raise that issue and be prepared for it. The argument about the smaller schools and the advantage of a small neighborhood school, which does have its advantages, and the bones of the neighborhood school. So the people in the neighborhood are going to want to know that. Notwithstanding the argument of other people, the people in the neighborhood are going to want to know. And part of it is, laying out what the attraction and advantage of this new facility will be. And of course, one of the things that we need to really think about is, and has always been an issue in this neighborhood, is crossing Boston Avenue. And, there has to be a plan for how we cross Boston Avenue. Whether you're coming from the Beardsley neighborhood or you're coming from my neighborhood to get across the street to Harding, the old Harding. And so, it's a major concern. And I don't know if you guys have discussed this or have any plan for this, but if you're going to make a proposal to build a new facility with all the bells and whistles that you're talking about, you got to deal with the bell and whistle of getting kids safely to and from school.
Listen, everything that we do is going to be thoughtful. We're going to make sure that we cross every single bridge on the way there. And I understand the concerns from the community, from some council members. But once again, we have to start to make tough decisions if we want to move forward in the
No,
district.
no, but I'm with you on that. But do you have
Yeah.
any, is there any thought given yet or plan given to how the kids get across Boston Avenue?
We're not there yet. We're still in development of the plan itself, but you know, part of the state requirements is traffic studies and migratory paths to buildings and all of those things. So, you know, we'll be able to ensure that the students will be able to make their way to school safely.
A question on the capacity. I saw a lot of the information about the capacity of current schools. When you did capacity, did you take into account controlled transfers?
Controlled transfers as in students that go to a school that they're not zoned for? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, we noticed that a lot. You know, and we've seen it.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mike, but I want to be clear. As a teacher at Blackham, we had a lot of students who didn't live in our neighborhood because people didn't want to go to their neighborhood school. They wanted to go to Blackham, or they wanted to get a controlled transfer to a better school.
I'm going to be honest with you. When I went through a lot of the data, a lot of the students that are controlled transfers were either due to the presence of say like a bilingual program that was at Marine, where they were coming from, you know, outside of that zone school to go there, and some of the other ones there was only the largest occurrence were due to either they were in a special program such as bilingual, or they were in a district-wide special ed program, or they were as part of the intra-district magnet school. Otherwise, they were kind of nominal, where it was just like a couple here or a couple there. There wasn't a tremendous prevalence of them. And I assume that typical to how state statute is, if you're granted an exception, you know, as the legislation calls it, you know, they're providing their own transportation, and there's a reason that's been vetted by the district of why they're there, whether it's caregiving after school or some other extenuating circumstance on a personal level. But I didn't see anything outside of the students in the database that we had that were, you know, actually tagged as being part of a special program that happened to be in that building itself.
Okay.
So Mr. Traver, I could answer that too. Part of the data set did have the control transfers in there. So because control transfers, like anything else, from year to year, you really don't know how many you're going to get. We know a lot ask for control transfers at this point, but we stayed away from certain schools like Winthrop because we knew that Winthrop's going to be a new building, and we knew that moving students from Winthrop into the swing space at BMA, we can't accept some of those. In other periods, like for Hall, Edison, Dunbar, and the schools that initially were going to be closed before obviously it came to the board, we made sure that any control transfer at this point out was accepted, but nothing was accepted in. Since that point, once that study came out, we opened it up again to where they could control transfer in or they could control transfer out. Again, when I go back to how many we had last year compared to how many we had this year, we have control and we have administrative transfers. So there's two aspects of it, but they were all in that data set when we looked at it. Again, when you project, it's hard on that end because you really don't know. I mean, yes, do a lot of parents want to go into Winthrop School or a school that they feel on a certain end? Sure, but that doesn't mean you're going to be granted just because you want to go there. We looked at that methodology, and again, you know, for the magnets, they can't go into a magnet. So, you know, when you look at the intra-district or inter-district, however it is, they can't get into it because it's through a lottery and through a program. So, yes, that was part of the breakdown, but I will be honest with you. we did not go back 10 years and take a look at, what it looked like, because it's pretty sporadic year to year.
Okay, thank you. In the packet entitled, the dated February 27th, the master plan status update review of key findings, on page 17, high school individual school projections. You project out 10 years. You sort of, and the 10-year trend is down in all high schools.
Yeah, correct.
I mean, the 5-year trend is down, except for Central. The 10-year trend is down for everybody. What's that about?
Correct. And I'll just bring that same chart back up again. You're right now in a bubble of high school where you're at your recent peak in high school. And that bubble is driven by, as I mentioned earlier in the earlier question, just a lot of elementary students that when you had a bubble in elementary, they're now in high school now. So these smaller cohorts over the last 8 years are moving up into the high school. And that's why we're going to see that high school enrollment drop off, eventually getting down to about 53, 5,200 and then bouncing back up again. So it really is that kind of ebb and flow of your enrollment by grade.
But on your 10-year trend, they're all down. They're all going down. You have a graph at the end of it that shows everybody going down.
Correct. So the elementary is going down, really driven because, and this is a great slide, and this was slide 7 for what we presented on February, I think it was 27th or 25th, I can't remember now. Either way, so it was last week. Your birth cohorts, especially those over the last 5 years, are much lower than what they were, say, 5 to 10 years ago. So we're seeing a continuation of those smaller kindergarten classes coming into the system, and then moving ahead. It's just really where you're at demographically.
So you're just saying that, the future of the city is the children are just dropping?
Yeah, you have much fewer births over the last several years than you've had at any time in the past. This chart does a great job of it. So when we look at that bigger class of kindergartners, first and second graders in 2010, 11, 12, those are corresponding to when the births were at an all-time peak. So when you had birth in 2006 of 2,500, your highest births in the last 25 years, that corresponds directly with your very large kindergarten class that you had at 1925 in 2011, 2012, right? So, it's that birth to K correlation from the demographic standpoint. When your births were higher, that lag of roughly 5 years, you had much larger kindergarten cohorts. So as births now have dropped off 500, 450 births below annually what they were, say, 20 years ago, that's leading to those smaller kindergarten cohorts.
So going back to Mr. Sokolovich's question about the new construction and everything, where this is going to the building, new housing for the young professionals without kids who will be attending our public schools.
Yeah, a lot of, and I'm switching between decks here. I'm going to open up that full 64 slide deck here and just go to the housing development slide, which is slide 13 if you want to note it, to give you a more streamlined approach when you get into that deck when you have time. So we went through all the developments, and by and large, we're tracking units, look at what has been built. We're seeing a lot of units that are very low in bedroom count. These are luxury market rate units, especially those that are still in that pending category at Steel Point, which construction is forthcoming. But we've seen construction like that before in our work in Connecticut and New Jersey, and we don't see a lot of students coming out of that type of housing unit.
Yeah, this is the gentrifying.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, a good case in point is projections that we did back, 15 years ago, 10 years ago in Norwalk, when those units were first starting to spring up in Stamford and Norwalk. And, you know, there was this fear that they were going to generate a lot of school-age children. And, you know, we're still doing work in those communities. And, you know, they typically generate, you know, 0.1, if that, students per unit. Very, 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 very small number. Not like, you know, a housing authority property that's going to have 2 or 3 bedrooms, or, you know, even say, you know, a multifamily with a higher bedroom count that has a, you know, a much higher affordability percentage. In Connecticut, you know, we do this, I probably do 20, 25 enrollment projections a year for different communities. We see these types of development and we track them. We address match students, and we just don't see the students yield coming from them.
Yeah.
It's good for the city from, you know, a housing standpoint. It's good from a housing standpoint, but it doesn't really generate school-age children.
Well, it's not good from the city from an affordable housing point of view.
No.
And the people that live in this city need affordable housing. It's not healthy when you look at the lack of affordable housing and the people that actually live here.
Sadly, I think that's a state, region, and a national problem.
Yes,
that
it is.
I don't think any of us are going to solve. We could chat, but it's a great conversation.
No, but you're correct. It's beyond Bridgeport. And the last thing I wanted to just comment on, unless I'm missing something, and I think that I just want to be clear, Mr. Sokolovic was pressing you on this, all of you. I'm looking at page 25, proposed elementary schools of the packet that was presented yesterday, the recommended master plan. And unless I'm missing anything, I don't see that any schools could close this next year. Because I heard what Mr. Sokolovic was saying. The proposed closed school. Well, actually, a question that I was asking, I started at the beginning, and I guess I'll go back to it. When I talked about Thought Exchange, how much of this data is now public? Are these on the website available for the public, or how is this being?
Mr. Traber, yes, all the documents are posted online. After every meeting, we just post them online for our community to.
That's
to
what I
go
was
to.
hoping was your answer, Dr.
Yes,
Avery. I
sir.
appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
And at the same time, did we remove all the old stuff?
We went through the web page and made sure that those are removed. You can correct me if I'm wrong, PJ, but I think that was a request that was made.
That
and-
was requested, and we had asked for it to be removed. It was removed.
Thank you. It's been
Yeah.
requested many times, but I know recently I talked to the chair about it, and she said she was going to speak with you all about it, because it would certainly create a great deal of confusion to have the old plan and the new plan posted on the same website.
Yes, sir. There was some contradiction.
So, all this stuff that was presented last week and this week is posted on the website for the public to look at. And you read the closed schedule on this page. If we went forward with this, I as proposed, nothing closes next year. Because you can't close anything until you've got the new building facilities built.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I just switched slides to help with the conversation
No,
too.
no,
This,
that was correct. I
and,
got you.
and,
That was exactly the
and,
slide I was looking at.
and I think this is a good way to look at it, of
Yep.
how we laid out that program.
Yes, sir.
And, dates are subject to funding and, a whole bunch of other things go into school construction, right? But this was our best shot at trying to lay out a reasonable schedule of how that waterfall should look.
Yep. I got you.
And I think, getting back to our early section of our master plan recommendations, and we know school construction takes time, and that's why we kind of put some of this in the front end. This is intended to guide that long-term vision. We identified, underutilized space. We also identified, what really draws our eye is those priority one, those major items for schools that need to be addressed. Obviously you want to be purposeful in how you're putting money into the schools. Nobody has unlimited funds to put money into every building. It has to have a thoughtful process by master plan. But I think the last sentence, near-term decision-making should be in alignment with the recommendations of the plan if you are in agreement, as PJ puts it, with the recommendations of the plan. So if, outside of this year, in between now and when construction is going to occur, if there are some schools that need to be consolidated, reference the plan. Look at what that's calling for, look at what that timeline and how that would lay out. If for extenuating financial and operational needs, it has to be done, right? We understand that.
That I get. And
it's the reality that, every district and everybody lives in anymore, right? And there's no, guarantees with funding. It's a difficult process. So we just wanted to make sure that was clear, that this is that longer term vision. And if things are going to happen in the interim, reference the plan. And that's why we also wanted to make the plan a bit malleable, to say that if things change, don't feel like you have to be beholden to what we wrote here is in stone. It's not. It's a guiding document, right?
Yes. I understand. I'm done. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm running the meeting because Ms. Perez had to do something in her job.
Thank you.
So
Thank
I have
you.
Mr. Woodson have her hands up. Mr. Woodson,
Thank you,
have a
Mr. Chair.
question?
Okay, one quick comment. I just want to remind Mr. Traver, at the finance meeting a couple of days ago, Mr. Inco stressed the importance of us moving in a timely fashion. Not the way he said it, but that's the nice way, of saying it. But I just want to remind Mr. Traver of that. And
I wasn't at the finance meeting, Mr. Woodson, so.
Yeah, he I think he had just walked. I don't know if he missed it, but he stressed, the importance of the timeline, of us having to move kind of quickly on these things. Even
Yes,
though
sir.
that the information
We're a month
coming
late.
out, like we just got some information today. So like I said, over the weekend we're gonna try to brush up on information so Monday we can make an informed decision. And we just got to start moving, like Mr. Inco said. If you didn't see it, it was a good meeting from the last finance meeting we had, and even
No, sir,
Joe,
I just got
Joe.
back, so I didn't see it.
Yeah, I know. I remember. I forgot you were out of town. But yeah, even Joe kind of was moving. And not I ain't gonna say he was changing his direction, but even Joe was listening a lot to Mr. Inco, and just realizing that we got to move kind of quick. Every day is costing us every hour. So just want to bring that up. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Mr. Woodson, and I couldn't agree with you more.
Thank you, Mr. Woodson. So I'd just like to make a motion to bring this to the full board to discussion only. They have a second.
So move.
Thank you. I second. Thank you, Mr. Woodson. So anyone have some questions just before I say adjourning? Mr. Sakalet, I know you really spoke, Mr. Traver or Mr. Bedina. Yes, Mr. Bedina, you got the floor, sir.
Thank you. Very small because I want to have a chance to review everything again. But I know George is still on and everybody is still on, and PJ also. sorry, Mr. Rafa, that I know we're going to be, looking at moving the district around a little bit and also what programs are where and all that stuff. Just want to make sure that everybody keeps in mind, as I'm the kind of like person that always thinks about this in this area, is the transportation costs, because that is going to be, also a factor that needs to be shown to the board when we talk about our budget process and when we talk about these schools, the way they're being shown to us and presented to us, that we look at, what could be a better thing, it could be a worse thing, but we need to see that the cause of what we're doing when we talk about redistricting and moving kids around, especially with the pre-K program that they're getting involved, because then that means every pre-K is probably going to be going to a certain area from all around the district. And it's just a concern when you talk about transportation costs. So we just want to keep that out there in the minds of the whole board, my colleagues, and also those that are working on the plan. But again, thank you, Mr. Suba. I enjoyed every trip that we took around the schools and everything. And the book is, about, I'm going to say about 6.5 inches thick. So I thank you for taking some time. I know we're going to have a few meetings, but I look forward to getting a true presentation to the full board before we take any vote or anything at all. So thank you again for your team, Mr. Superintendent, George, Mr. Carafa, and everyone in question, and all the board members and committee members. Thank you very much.
All right, as Mr. Medina said, I don't need to say it again, but thank you, everyone. So I'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
You got to vote, I believe, sir.
You didn't vote on your motion yet.
You didn't vote on your motion. You got a motion and a second, but you haven't voted.
So sorry, I didn't hear you say it again.
You made a motion. Andre made a motion. You seconded it.
Yeah.
And then you had discussion and made it. You haven't done your vote, boss.
Yeah, I wasn't going through that, but you just say it. I'm trying to say it, but you went through it. So, all right, any discussion? None. Anyway. So, in favor, I was trying to make a motion, to bring this to the board to discuss. So I just make a motion to adjourn the meeting. I know Mr. Woodson say so moved. Thank you, Mr. Woodson.
I'm sorry. Wait, Mr. Benningham, if I may. Mr. Benningham, if I may. I think you misunderstood, so I'm going to do it a little slower. You already have made a motion to bring this over for discussion to the whole board. You had a motion made by Mr. Andre Woodson, said so move. You seconded it. You opened to discussion, and that's when I asked a question. I want to discuss one more point. And you guys had not voted as a committee. Yeah, you haven't voted. That's what I was trying to bring to your attention, that you guys actually have not voted the motion on the floor to move this for discussion to the whole board prior to your statement trying to adjourn the meeting. So I want to remind you that was my point that I was making.
That's what I said in the beginning, Mr. Medina, and I'd say that before adjourn the meeting to make a motion to discuss only into the full board. That's what I said early. I don't know if you hear me, but Mr. Woodson says second in the beginning, or I'm wrong.
No, he already made the motion, sir.
Yeah.
You're just making a vote. Yes, okay. No, that's it. Vote, yes.
Medina, please don't make everything long. I want to go home. I want to relax. Everybody want to relax. So, all right. So, join meeting. See you soon. Thank you for everything. God bless you all.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Appreciate
you, everyone, for
Thank
your support.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.